What's going on, everyone? So recently, FFG dropped the complete Legend of the Force set. And that means that we've got all the legendaries, all the rares, all the commons and uncommons. But today, we are actually ranking all of the legendaries from the set from S to D. As you all love and remember all the tier lists that we like doing here. Guys, I have played with all of the legendaries on this list. I said I've played with them. Some of them I have barely been able to actually play because they're so expensive, but I have at least tried all of them in the deck. So I want to give you all my first impressions on all the cards here. Some of these are game-breaking, like meta-defining cards, and some of these are probably cards that you'll never play. Before we dive into the list, I just have a quick word for you all. Guys, if you're looking to fill in the time between your matches at your local showdowns or at tournaments you're traveling to, I have a solution for you. Marvel Strike Force is a squad-based RPG on your mobile device, which is perfect to dive into the Marvel universe. And if you use my link in the description or scan my QR code in the top left, you can download the game for free and unlock some free characters. My personal favorite part of a lot of these hero collectors, and in particular with Marvel Strike Force, is the ability to collect and design teams around your favorite characters, or in this case, favorite Marvel heroes. For me, Doctor Strange and the Astral Team, that's what I want to go for. But you also have local city heroes like Spider-Man, or even cosmic conquerors like Kang, or even Cosmo as characters to unlock. You can use these characters battle out in the campaign missions, raids, or even PvP content like Arena, and it just adds a whole nother level of excitement when you build up these characters and are able to beat a piece of content or a mission that you otherwise were not able to before. And to celebrate Marvel Studios' new film, Thunderbolts, Marvel Strike Force is giving away 5 free characters by using code BUCKY when you download, and for a limited time, you'll get access to Winter Soldier, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, Yelena Belova, and Ghost. Don't miss out, and on top of all, you can unlock Ironheart in celebration of the upcoming show based on Ironheart. Download using my link or the QR code at the top and start collecting your favorite Marvel characters today. And thank you, Marvel Strike Force, for sponsoring this video. Now, as we're talking about these cards, guys, we've got a few tiers on the list. Basically here for S, we've got the game changers. These are the cards that honestly I could see building entire decks around, and they are going to be massive contenders for cards that are the best in the entire set. A tier cards, these are cards that seem very, very plausible to just kind of slot in a lot of different decks as a really big power bump for certain archetypes or for certain decks already, or even decks that you may even want to consider changing your aspect over because they are quite powerful. B tier, these are going to be cards that kind of are just staples. They're going to be cards that you fit in your decks, nice cards to play on curve, good stat lines, good effects, or just kind of everything that you want for that specific deck. C tier, these are going to be the ones that are quite niche, and probably not going to be played all that often without the very, very specific proper circumstances. And then D tier, these are the ones that I don't see being played at all, or if you are playing it, there's going to be very minimal actual advantage to do so, and you should probably just play something else. With that said, guys, big thank you to my patrons, and let's dive into the Vigilance cards right away. All right, everyone, into the Vigilance cards. We've got an absolute banger to start off with, and for all my, well, viewers, I'm going to put the card right up on screen, nice and large when we talk about these cards, and for all my podcasters, guys, we're going to talk about Darth Vader first off. I'll describe him for you. We got a 6-drop ground unit, Vigilance, Villainy, 5/6. When played, you give a shield token to a friendly unit and to an enemy unit, and then on attack, you defeat an enemy unit with a shield token on it. This guy has been an absolute game changer, and this is one of the cards where I think literally will change how people build decks. Right now, we're really focused on data vault, really focused on like 30 HP bases. Just having a lot more HP in your base is very valuable. This, I could see those styles of decks, those Villainy Command Vigilance decks, transitioning over to ECL mainly for Vader. But of course, there's other great ECL targets. Gideon's one of them. As an example, Rook has always been a good one. Not that you'd be playing Rook, but Darth Vader is the reason why you'd want to move over to ECL. This guy, if you've watched any of my previous videos of the past couple of weeks, I've had games where I immediately concede after this guy gets ECL'd out. I've had games where my opponents immediately concede when he ECLs out because the game ends. Think about when this comes down on the curve, okay? He comes down when most leaders have either already deployed or will be deploying. So let's say you're playing like Krennic ECL, or you're playing Kira ECL, or you're playing the Talzin ECL. All of those have really threatening leader flips. Okay, you've got Kira, who's just going to wipe your board. You've got your Krennic, which is going to start restoring you up. You've got Talzin, which is going to take over the game by shrinking down your opponent's units. So your opponent kind of has to deploy their leader to compete with a lot of these other leaders, or they just will slowly lose out the game, right? Because Krennic just restoring is just going to pull you out of lethal for them. If you've got Talzin, she's going to take over the game, just shrinking all your units down and just completely dominating the board. So your opponent needs to deploy more to the board, and that's where ECL Vader comes in, because he's going to put a shield token on your opponent's space unit or a shield token on the opponent's leader unit, ambushed out. He's going to give that shield token to himself, and he's going to be able to knock out one of their smaller units, right? Because it's a 5/6 body. It's still an impressive body. He's going to hit like a Kanan or a 4/5 or whatever, kill that, and just delete whoever got the shield token. Just kill it. Straight up. It doesn't have to be a ground unit. It could be a space unit. It doesn't have to be a non-leader unit. It can be either leader unit. There are so many times where my opponent's playing, like, let's say Anakin Blue. Very, very classic deck. And also pretty good with the new set. Your opponent's just kind of playing along on their curve, playing all their units. Okay. Turn comes up when Anakin's about to deploy. They've got maybe like a Kanan on the board. Maybe they deployed some sort of 5-drop. Maybe a Kiadi-Mundi. And then, boom, Darth Vader comes down. Oh, you deployed Anakin? Killed Anakin, killed Kanan. Even for like earlier game decks, if you're playing Command, this thing comes down potentially even earlier than when their leader or their resources match yours. So, you're playing against Sabine, for example, and she's deployed her Sabine. Maybe she ECL'd out Poe Dameron's deal with one of your units. Well, actually, that's the same turn that you got Vader down because you've ramped a little bit, and boom, you knock out Poe Dameron and you kill Sabine on the same turn. It's just incredible. The amount of value this guy gets from ECLing him out is great. But then I've talked a lot about ECL. What about like if you've just got Vader deploying? Well, Vader comes down. He's a 5/6 body. He's shielded. You could put the shield token on something that doesn't actually have the ability to interact with you to remove that shield token, because obviously they can attack into your units to remove the shield token, which makes Darth Vader a little bit weaker. So oftentimes what I found is put a shield token on Vader, put a shield token on their space units, boom, next turn I attack, hit another unit, kill their space unit, and it's still excellent. The worst case scenario means that he's still a solid unit. And that worst case scenario is just playing him naturally. Again, timely intervention, ECL, the new Cunning event that allows you to ambush out a force unit, all have just been insane with Vader. And I could talk about this guy for a long time, but man, he has been one of the most game-changing units to ECL out. Next up, we've got Always 2. This one's got to go in C tier. I mentioned earlier about C tier being the very niche category. Always 2 definitely fits that style. The payoff is amazing, but the cost of kind of situating your deck to make this work is pretty high. 4-cost event in Vigilance Villainy. Choose 2 friendly Sith units, unique Sith units. If you do, give 2 shield tokens and 2 experience tokens to each of the chosen units, and just go ahead and defeat all of the friendly units. So the way this works is you really want to have 2 friendly Sith units on the board, and that's it. That's it. This is kind of tough to do. There's not a ton of Sith units in the game. One of the cards actually that I think this works really well with is earlier Sith units, such as, well, we're going to talk about them later, but like HK-47. But Always 2 really doesn't have an amazing curve out. And what I mean by that is, okay, let's say you're playing your leaders that have Sith tag, right? Like Asajj Ventress, or let's say Darth Revan. Okay, all of those, Asajj comes down on 4, Revan comes down on 5. Are you going to be able to have another Sith unit with it? It's not super likely, because there's not a ton of cheap Sith units. Darth Tyrannus is one of the better ones. That comes down on 4. So you could technically curve Darth Tyrannus into Darth Revan and then play Always 2. Darth Malak is one that you're probably very, very likely to play if you're playing Always 2, because you'll have a Sith leader most likely. And that means that he comes down immediately ready. So what needs to happen is you play this unit, you play your leader, or you play another Sith unit, and then you have to wait to the following turn to actually get Always 2 down in most scenarios. And that can mean that your opponent can interact with it very, very quickly. And you also need to make sure that you're constructing your deck to where you actually are very likely to have those unique Sith units. So it's not in C tier for the lack of being powerful. It's in C tier for the purpose of being very, very niche. You really need to make sure that your deck is constructed to have this be functional. And what I've found oftentimes is against the more mid-rangey style of decks with a lot of removal, let's say you do all this and you've got your Sith units down, you've got always 2, boom, I got a big double shielded, double experienced unit ×2, right? Well, it still doesn't match up that well against removal. So if your opponent's got like Power of the Dark Side, takedowns, and things like that, it gets a lot worse, and that can be very, very tricky. It also does not match up well against Vader, and that's something to consider because Vader is a prominent card in the meta. And I've had situations where I've played always 2, and then I get Vader coming down, and boom, he knocks out a unit, and I suddenly am forced to deal with Vader. Otherwise, he's just going to knock out my other unit. So definitely something to consider, but that's always 2. Next up, we've got Anakin Skywalker, and this one is pretty interesting. So this guy has been one that I've been on my radar, one that has been on my radar for a while now. 6-drop ground unit in Vigilance. It's a 5/7. When played, if you control a heroism card in your discard palette, you may give a unit -3/-3 for this phase. And the same thing is true for Villainy cards. So if you have a Villainy card, you can also give another unit or the same unit -3/-3. So the idea with this card is, okay, am I going to be able to have multiple different aspects in my deck in terms of Villainy and heroism? For a while there, we weren't sure if we were going to have a leader that matches it, right? So far, we've only had like the Palpatine leader, which I've seen this card be played in Palpatine, and it has amazing potential. But until recently, when we got Anakin, it was like, okay, how good is the card without getting another aspect in my deck, right? Guess what? He's an A tier card just by having the single aspect in your deck. Turns out playing a 6-drop 5/7 that gives something -3/-3 is still pretty good. It's still quite good and actually has some pretty good impact. He has a good body. 5/7 is pretty reasonable, and him just coming down and shrinking down a unit or killing something off is actually really powerful. I've seen a lot of decks, and I've played a lot of decks with just having this in my deck as a 5/7 that gives something -3/-3, and it's performed like an 8-tier card. What about, is it worth it to start diving into all these other aspects to actually get Anakin the double trigger? Oh yeah, it is. The card is absolutely disgusting in those decks, and for that reason, I've got to put him in S tier as well. The new Anakin 4/6 comes down, really nice body, goes ahead and plays all these other Villainy events, Overwhelming Barrage, Power of the Dark Side, and then you get to curve into Anakin. So you deploy your Anakin leader that's going to give you that ignoring aspect penalties. So you can play your Overwhelming Barrage. The turn he comes down, you hit things for 6 damage. Maybe you knock out one unit and you shrink down another unit. Then you curve that into Anakin, finish off that other unit, and shrink down another unit to maybe have the potential to kill that. Guys, he is a disgusting card. And honestly, his payoff is insane to the point where, like, I've seen Palpatine blue decks, like the set 3 Palpatine that can play both aspects, play Anakin, and almost make up for the fact that they don't have a leader. Palpatine, very, very weak in terms of like overall meta and how it performs, but this card almost allows you to come back just how powerful this thing is. Not to mention, if you're playing the new Anakin, you can also play things like Palpatine's Return to bring this back from the discard pile and then trigger it again, right? Really, really cool stuff with Anakin, and his power level is pretty high. I've even seen decks that just play out of aspect Villainy cards to make this card better. I don't think that's what you should be doing, but I do think there are a lot of different options here, and you could just play him as a solid unit. But also, I think Anakin has been really, really quite powerful to the point where this might just bring him over the edge. The leader, that is, plus the unit, bring him over the edge. Next up, we've got Mythosaur, and honestly, unlike all the other cards, I think this is one that requires a lot less talking about. 9-drop ground unit in Vigilance. It's a 10/10 Mandalorian creature, shielded. Friendly upgrade units can't be exhausted or returned to hand by enemy card abilities. And then friendly leaders gain the Mandalorian trait. So first thing, it's a 9-drop. Anytime I see a 9-drop, it better be like game changing. It either like better do something immediately, like defeat a unit like Avenger does, or it might just hopefully lock out your opponent from playing events, units, or upgrades like Crate Dragon does, or if they do, they get punished for doing so. This thing's just a fat unit. And then what its effect does doesn't really actually affect the board, right? Because all you're doing is essentially allowing your other units to not get affected, assuming they have upgrades, by your opponent interacting with them. And that requires you to either, already have a big board your opponent doesn't want, or that you don't want your opponent to be messing around with, that also has upgrades on them. Otherwise, it's just a 9-drop 10-10, right? Shielded, which, yes, it's a big body, and yes, it can win you a game, but also a lot of other 9-drops can win you the game. So I'm going to put this in D tier. I think if this was Twin Suns, I could definitely see this being like B or even A tier, because I could see, longer games, getting into the late game. You've got all these upgraded units, and then boom, you drop a Mythosaur and they can't touch them. And you've got a 9-drop 10-10 shielded, which is kind of cool. But guys, in a real game, I've tried to play Mythosaur, and every single time I do, it's either like, oh, I'm already winning the game because I got like 2 or 3 upgraded units and, I'm crushing them. Or I'm like, oh yes, I've drawn my Mythosaur. Let me resource that because it's turn 3. Like that's really how that functions. It is definitely a win more card in my opinion, and it's a 9-drop as well. So very, very tricky to use. But that wraps up Vigilance cards. Let's move on to Command. To start us off, we've got Supremacy, and I know it's everyone's favorite 12-drop space unit in Command, Villainy. It's a 12/12. It's got the first order tag. It's got the capital ship tag. It's an absolute really weak card. It's got Ambush. It's got other friendly vehicle units get +5/+5. It is a fat unit, and it will win you the game most of the times when you play it. Okay, it's going to come down. It's going to kill off their space units. If you have any vehicles on the board, it's probably turning them into winning the game situations. Honestly, this is a type of card where, like, if I was playing Twin Suns, I'd be building Piet Vader. Okay, I'd be going hard on space. Boom, boom, boom. Hopefully get my Supremacy down by reducing the cost a ton with Piet. And then that's how I'm going to win the game. Seems like a sweet Twin Suns combo. In Premier, it's an absolute D tier. It's an absolute D tier. It's a 12-drop spaceship, guys. It's not going to be played. We've seen this with like Executor. It doesn't get played, even in Piet. And even if it does, it's not actually winning you the game most of the time. Only in specific circumstances. And most of the time, you'd rather just have a card, because that card in Supremacy would have been better served as a different card for most of your matchups. So yeah, definitely going to be a D tier, but I could see the potential. Okay, I could see it. I can see it. Next up, we've got another space unit in Leia Organa. By the way, guys, seeing this card has been, it was actually hilarious seeing this card. I can't believe they just made Leia Organa a space unit. But anyways, 5-drop space unit, Command Heroism. It's a 5/5 force resistance official. While this unit is in the space arena, she can't ready and gains action, use the force, move this unit to the ground arena, and give each friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase. Heroism unit, that is, +2/+2. So first off, 5-drop space unit, 5/5. It's not even like that crazy. If she was able to attack in the space arena, it's not a horrible stat line in the space arena for sure. But as a 5-drop 5/5 ground unit, it's definitely on the like, okay, it's average, I guess, side of things. You really got to get value out of the +2/+2 from her action, because that's really what she's offering. Otherwise, if you're in 5 resources, I mean, you could be playing like Blue Leader at the same time, which ambushes out and the ground arena, and that's like typically a 3-drop too. Like the versatility, like it's crazy even comparing those two. But Leia, can you get value from the +2/+2? In my experience, it's been really tough. So I've done a couple different things. I've played like Rex Green with Mystic Monastery, so you can generate the force at will, right? And then you have like a bunch of Clone Trooper tokens, and you drop Rex, and boom, you've got your Clone Trooper token, you got your Rex, which is 2 units that can benefit from Leia Organa. It was okay. It was not amazing. It felt pretty weak, to be honest. And I would not replace my Droid Manufactory for Mystic Monastery in most cases. It just makes the deck weaker. And that was like one of the few decks that I feel like could actually get value from Leia. Because remember, you still need to build a deck that can actually generate the force when you need it, which means you have to alter your deck building, not just from going wide, but also from going wide and providing force generation for Leia to be good. And for those reasons, I'm gonna have to put Leia in D tier. Actually, I know it could be like a niche card, but I don't even think the payoff is good enough to where it is in like a C tier category. Next up, we've got Yoda. This guy, he is an 8-drop 5/9 in command heroism. When played, you may use the Force. If you do, you get to heal 5 damage from your base. And when you use the Force, you may deal damage to a unit equal to twice the number of units you control. This one's pretty interesting. Definitely a late game card, but it does actually service as a pretty good late game card. Similar to Leia, you do need to be in a deck that generates the Force, but there are a lot of decks that actually do generate the Force. For example, Ivar Chris is one that absolutely will be generating the Force all the time and can actually work very well with Yoda. That's one of the decks I think that was most impressive because I can generate the Force whenever I want, and then I can deploy her, and then I have Yoda, which means I'm dealing 4 to a unit, and I'm getting to heal, which means I'm able to, maybe get to the later stages of the game. It was actually not bad at all, especially since you could curve Yoda into Avar Chris, which is really, really interesting. So there are a few decks that like it's decent in, and its power level is relatively high. Like if you get to the 8-drop standpoint, having a 5/9 body that also heals you, that also starts knocking out units, is actually pretty good. But you do need to be in a deck again that generates and uses the Force, because otherwise this is probably just better served as a home one. So I think this actually ends up in the C tier category, where you're going to find most of these cards that are like, okay, I need to be doing this and this and this, but could I just be playing home one? Probably. And is home one better? Probably. Or like Caloran Beck, for example. Like there's a lot of other options that provide you that late game powerhouse that doesn't require as much setup. So I think C tier for Yoda is going to be the place for him. Next up, we've got Oppo Rancis. I butchered this guy's name. It is what it is. Anyways, this guy is the Keyword Soup card. He's a 3-resource double command ground unit, 3/5 Force Jedi Republic, and this says when this guy gains ambush while other friendly units have ambush, or another friendly unit has ambush, and the same is true for Grit, Hidden, Overwhelm, Sentinel, Shielded, etc., etc. And then this unit gains Raid 2 or Restore 2 if another unit has Raid or Restore. So basically, guys, I'm playing keywords. I'm gonna play Oppo, right? I've tried playing this guy. I do think he ends up in C tier, similar to Yoda and Always 2. Very, very niche down card. Very, very specific, right? I've played like Morgan Elspeth. I've played cards that, are like generating Restore 2 that have ambush. Like, for example, Jedi Temple Guards. But the curve, where he ends up on the curve, makes me like him so much less. Because remember, you have to play like turn 1, you're playing a card that has a keyword. Most of the time, they're not going to have ambush. Most of the time, they're not going to be super powerful. They could have shielded. That's very likely. And he comes down as a 3-resource, 3/5 shielded. I've seen that absolutely happen a lot. But all the really nice keywords come a little bit later. Like, again, for example, Jedi Temple Guards, which is not a card I'd rather be playing. But let's say you go Jedi Temple Guards into Oppo. Suddenly, he is a 3-resource, 3/5 Restore 2 ambush. But it's on turn 4. When you could have played a 5-drop. So the payoff is not that great. The deck also that I play with him is not just Morgan Elspeth. I've also played like double green Boba Fett from like set 2. So you can generate a little bit more value with him, which is kind of fun. But overall, this has not been an incredible card, but it does actually get pretty powerful if you are able to generate a bunch of keywords. So that has been pretty good. So yes, it has a specific spot, but hasn't been like incredibly insane. And that's the command units, guys. Pretty weak in terms of the command units compared to the Vigilance cards, but I think the Vigilance cards are just better than most of the other cards here. And now we get to dive into our aggression options. To start us off in the aggression category, we've got HK47. This one is a 2-resource aggression villainy ground unit, 2/4 Sith droid. When an enemy unit is defeated, deal 1 damage to its controller's base. And I'm gonna just immediately slot it into B tier. It's been a card that's like, okay, reasonable stat line. It's got 4 toughness, which is relevant in some situations. It's gonna survive. It's not incredibly exciting. It doesn't have anything too crazy going on. Unlike a lot of the other legendaries on this list, this is our cheapest one. So we don't actually have a ton of crazy abilities. Like, it's literally the cheapest legendary of the set. So it's just kind of like a standard unit. Definitely fits in a lot of decks. Like, I've played Rev in Red, where HK47 did fit in. I've played other decks with, like, Vigilance and Aggression in them, so that you can play always two, because this is a unique Sith unit, which is kind of fun. But overall, I mean, he's not like incredibly impressive. It's just like, oh, it's a card that I'm going to slot in decks that are looking for this type of body. I do think he just fits well in there. Nothing too crazy. Definitely not on the higher end of B tier. If there were like a competition, it would be definitely on the lower end of B tier, because again, he's not in crazy impressive. And what he wants to do is kill other units, but also that's inviting him to be more aggressive into the base, because he's dealing damage to the base, and he's also not a very aggressive unit. I think if he was a 3/3, this would be a lot better. But because of a 2/4, he's going to survive, but he's also not really going to kill anything. So just like a mediocre B tier type card. Next up, we got Grand Inquisitor. And this one is also kind of in the same category for me. He's a 3-resource, 3/4 ground unit, aggression villainy, 3/4 force Imperial Inquisitor, has hidden, has raid 1, and gives other friendly Inquisitor units hidden. So to me, definitely better than HK, but still a B tier. This is one of those cards where I could absolutely see fitting into a lot of my decks that are looking for this effect. What do I mean by this effect? Reasonably aggressive unit, a not immediately going to die body because it's got hidden, it's got 4 toughness, has the force tag, may be relevant for the Imperial Inquisitor tag as well, right? All of those things, especially in, like, let's say old Grand Inquisitor, right? This works perfectly. Is a 4-powered attacker, can be immediately readied up. If you're looking to play like a force throw deck, that's aggression villainy, you're probably playing Grand Inquisitor. I do think it fits nicely in there, but overall, nothing too crazy to write home about, right? It doesn't really have anything outside of just being a solid unit on curve, but that tends to be what happens with these cheaper units, right? This is a 3-drop. Similar to HK, it's one of the cheaper cards in the legendary category, and you're probably not expecting a whole lot. I don't think the Inquisitor units gains hidden has been all that relevant in the times that I've played him. I do like him having hidden because, he is on the squishier side for a 3-drop, so him coming down, it's very unlikely for him to die unless your opponent's just going to straight up remove him, like in terms of removal. So, and that does happen, but he's a very aggressive unit, right? 4 power is nice on attack, so not bad at all, just nothing too exciting about Grand Inquisitor. The next one we've got is Sin Draleg. This one's pretty cool. He is an 8-drop aggression heroism unit, 5/6, so horrible stat line initially. Force Jedi Republic. When playing, you may play a lightsaber upgrade from your hand for free on this unit, and if you do, you get to ready him. So if you don't have a lightsaber, this is an 8-drop 5/6. It's trash. It is like ultimate D tier, worst card in the set. Horrible. Like, that's how the level of him, right? If you have a lightsaber, he's decent. He's actually pretty good. I've gotten the combo. As I mentioned, when I first went over Sin, I first tried him in like Rey Red and like Anakin Blue, because those decks tend to play like Jedi lightsaber. And it kind of just fits perfectly. He comes down, is an 8-drop, 8/9 that gets readied up immediately and sometimes ends the games, or is just an effective presence to deal with some of the board. That's not bad. But again, you need to be playing an 8-drop. You need to be in a deck that wants an 8-drop. You need to be in a deck that's playing lightsabers already, because you don't really want to be playing lightsabers for Sin to work. And even if you are, you need to have the combination of lightsaber plus Sin for this to even be a playable card. So to me, this is like a C tier card. Very much a niche specific card, can be powerful, but is in very certain circumstances that can even be relevant for him to do anything on the board. Because remember, if you don't have that lightsaber, this guy is a 8-drop 5/6, and that is it. It is not good. It is really not good. Even if you get the lightsaber after you play him, it is a when played trigger. So you need to have lightsaber when you are playing this guy. So very much a niche card. And then next up, we've got Bendu. This one is an 8-drop ground unit in aggression. It is a 10/10 force creature. It has on attack, deal 3 damage to each other unit. A lot of people were excited about this. It is an 8-drop. It's got a pretty good stat line. Okay, it's got a pretty good stat line. A 10/10 is kind of obnoxious. it has this on attack trigger to start picking down every other unit. So if you don't deal with him, if he gets an attack in, suddenly all your units have 3 less toughness. And then again, on the next attack, he's probably wiping the board because that's 6 damage to each other unit, which is a lot, right? And he does have a good stat line. Like, compare this to Sin, right? Even with a lightsaber, Bennu is bigger. So good stat line, but nothing too crazy going on outside of that. I've played decks with like Han 2 green, where you have the resource count reduction from Han. You've played Malakili to reduce the creature cost, and suddenly, he's in a 6-drop. And he comes down, and you actually don't even deal damage to your other units because Malakili prevents that. So actually a pretty nice combo, but that's not really going to happen all that often. I've played him as a 7-drop 10-8, and he is, decent in there as well. Nothing too crazy again, but he is a 10-8, which is obnoxious to deal with. So I do think in like certain decks, he does fit in. So probably more of like a C tier card. I do think he actually performed better in a lot of situations than like Oppo and Sin, but definitely a very niche specific option. And most decks, if you're just playing an 8-drop 10-10, it's not oftentimes good enough, especially since it could just be removed, right? And I know the it could just be removed argument is not usually all that great, but this one is later on in the game where it's more likely to have removal. So definitely a little bit on the interesting side. And if you're not playing a deck that can actually deploy him earlier, then you still need to get an attack in with him, which can be tricky to do sometimes as well. It's definitely more of a niche card. But that's all the aggression cards, guys. Now we move on to Cunning. Starting us off in the Cunning category, you got Martian Rowe. This guy, we played it with a little bit. And the 6 resource 6/7 just hasn't really done it for me. So 6 cost ground unit, Cunning Villainy, 6/7, as I mentioned. Underworld, Nile, each friendly unit's raid is doubled. So really, really interesting kind of effect where you might be able to play this with a bunch of the other Nile units like Strike Ship or the Nile Marauder or heck, even something like a Fifth Brother, right? All of that's going to double up and do some good work. So the idea here is top end of your curve, you drop this guy, hopefully you have a couple other raid units, and this essentially provides a 6/7 body, but then also hopefully will give you an extra 3 to 4 damage, maybe even more when he comes down because your other units are going to get pumped up. What really happens is that all those raid units tend to really die quickly because they don't have high power, so that your opponent just attacks them. It's usually what happens in general in a lot of the games I've played. And then coupled with that, by the time you do get this guy down, it's almost guaranteed that their opponents are going to be focusing your units down, or you're just in a bad spot. A lot of the times it's just better, especially in Cunning, to just finish off your opponent with more events at this stage of the game. And what I mean by that is in the early game, you're playing a bunch of units. Then when you get to the 6 resources, you're using like the Change of Hearts of the world, you're using Surprise Strikes, using that type of effect, or you're using No Good to Me Deads and Waylays to stall out the game so that your already current units can finish off the job. And for that, I'm actually going to put this guy in D tier. He's not horrible. Okay, he's not like absolutely atrocious. I just think that there's so many better options that I wouldn't even play this guy like ever. Again, if you have a specific raid deck, even then, those cards won't be able to actually compete in combat so that you actually have enough to where this guy's useful to play at that moment. Next up, we got Qui-Gon Jinn. This one's actually been a pretty good one. 7 cost ground unit in Cunning Heroism, 7/5 Force Jedi Republic. It's got Ambush. And when it's defeated, you may choose a non-leader ground unit. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their deck. So here's the great thing about this. The fail case is you play a 7 resource 7/5. Not amazing, but not horrible, right? Not like I'd go out of my way to play a 7 resource 7/5. Definitely wouldn't be something I'd want to put in my deck if that's all I was getting. But oftentimes, this will be a 7 resource 7/5 that kills a unit and sticks around. And if it sticks around, your opponent has to worry about maybe playing multiple units into it because they can get a unit killed after Qui-Gon Jinn actually gets defeated. Or in a lot of other scenarios, it's going to be a 7 resource 7/5 that kills a unit and then kills another unit. 2 for 1, right? Because it's going to hit a ground unit. Now, that is one of the big things about Qui-Gon Jinn is it is good, but it can't hit space units. So that is a relatively decent downside. For that reason, I don't know if I can really push it towards A tier. To me, it's more of a B tier card. Still good. Still something I usually play one or two of in a lot of my Cunning heroism decks. But remember, the 7-drop has a lot of options. Enfys Nest, the other Han Solo. And honestly, Han Solo, the fact that he attacks first, oftentimes actually generates a better board state for you in the long run, because he will live, he'll be able to attack again and again and dominate the board. Whereas Qui-Gon's more of this burst of potential, either wiping the board really quickly or, killing something off and then being a threatening presence for the ground arena. It does, in Han's case, have the same limitation as Qui-Gon, is that it only affects the ground arena, but still, there are a lot of ground arena decks, and it does perform decently well. So definitely like a B tier for Qui-Gon. Next up, we've got Zuckuss. This one's kind of a fun one. 5-cost double Cunning ground unit, 4/7 Force Bounty Hunter, and he has this ability to, on attack, name a card, then discard the top card of the defending player's deck. If a card with the name is discarded, this unit gets +4/+0 for this attack. So essentially, 5 resource 4/7 with relevant tags that can then become an 8/7 on attacks. That's pretty much it. There's really isn't anything else to do with Zuckuss. So first off, the ability. How likely is it for him to get the trigger off? Unlikely, because you have to name a card from your opponent's deck. So you have to know the top card of your opponent's deck in order for this to be guaranteed. So let's say you're going to name a card. Let's say you know most of them. You do the math in your head, and you get generously like, okay, there are 3 copies of a card left in their deck. They've got 37 cards in their deck. Maybe it's like an 8%, 7% chance that you'll hit the right one. That's disgustingly low. That is not reliable at all. And it's double Cunning, right? This is one of the few cards here that actually is double aspect, similar to Oppo. But this guy isn't even really doing what double Cunning tends to want. This is just like kind of a high toughness beater, right? To me, this card gonna be a D tier as well. There isn't a whole lot that could really synergize with this. There are some options like double Cunning Thrawn, which was kind of fun because you can kind of check out what cards people are drawing. So you can kind of figure out what their deck is, and you do all that type of stuff. And then you'll know the top card of their deck after the regroup phase. So then you can go ahead and name it and get +4/+0. But it's still, I don't want to say just an 8/7, because an 8/7 is obnoxious for 5 resources. But it is just an 8/7 in terms of like, it doesn't do anything else. It's just an attacker. And in Thrawn, you are playing now Thrawn as your leader in double Cunning versus all the other double Cunning decks that you could be playing. So you are essentially nerfing your leader to play a card that's going to get like slightly better than a lot of the other 5-drops that you could be playing. Because again, double Cunning is really looking for more disruption as you go along the curve, especially the 5-drop slot. This is like the Cantina Bouncer slot, and that's a really important card in the deck. So Zuckuss, I haven't been that impressed with it. I could see maybe an argument for a C tier, but I've just been super unimpressed with Zuckuss so far. Next up, we've got Legacy Run. This one's a hilarious one, okay? 5-cost space unit in Cunning. It's a 3/3 Republic Vehicle Transport, and it's pretty straightforward. When defeated, you deal 6 damage divided as you choose amongst enemy units. That's it. It is realistically just there to die and then deal a bunch of damage to your opponents. Or rather, opponents' units is what I should say. So I've tried this in a couple different decks. The first thing I tried was like New Thrawn Yellow. So the New Thrawn with the when defeated doubling up, you can deal 12 damage as divided as amongst enemy units, which is a lot. But overall, the way this is played out, there are really 2 scenarios. One, you play this, your opponent has no space units, it sits there, it's a 3/3 for 5 in space. And you have very little options to defeat it. You could play like Merciless Contest, which can defeat your own Legacy Run, but now you've played 2 cards, a total of 8 resources to potentially wipe the board. That's a lot of kind of setup and probably not necessarily good, right? The other option is you play this, your opponent does have a space unit, maybe they have another unit on board, you attack into their space unit, basically defeat your own Legacy Run, and then it basically kills that space unit and then kills their other unit. which is like the best case scenario. So you play this for 5 resources. Best case scenario, you attack a unit, you get to kill that one and another unit. Obviously, when I say best case scenario, it could be like multiple units depending on how much damage they have on it, but that's kind of what I mean is you attack into it, something, you kill a space unit, and you get to deal a bunch of damage to a bunch of other units, right? In that scenario, it's still not that great. You still just played 5 resources for doing that. Again, not that anyone should compare against Overwhelming Barrage, but very similar effect in terms of dealing damage to a bunch of things. Overwhelming Barrage just like knocks this out of the park. You don't need to play it. You don't need to, like, if it gets waylaid, it's just absolutely doomed. If they don't have a space unit, it's absolutely doomed. If you do play this and you attack into a unit, they may not actually play anything else into it. It's very, predictable and you're able to play around it. This to me is like a C tier option. It can do like powerful things sometimes, and it can 2-for-1 your opponent. Like 5 resources, kill space unit, kill ground unit. It's not bad. It's actually pretty good, right? That's actually a really solid situation, but it requires multiple actions. It requires a lot of setup because you need to be able to play this. You need to have the board to where you can't just get it bounced, or that your opponent actually has a way to finish it off in case they don't have a space unit. That could be a problem. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with Legacy Run. So for me, it is a C tier card. Very fun, but not that strong. And then we move on to the final sets of cards here: the Heroism, the Villainy, and the Unaspected, or the colorless. Starting us off with Darth Malak. Actually gonna put this guy in A tier immediately, guys. Darth Malak, 5 cost ground unit in Villainy. It's a 4/7 Force Sith unit. It's got Overwhelm, and when played, if you control a Sith leader unit, you may ready this unit. So obviously this card really only functions exceptionally well with other Sith leaders. However, the card is so strong with those Sith leaders that it actually makes it worthwhile playing these leaders just because of Malak. So it definitely does change like kind of the nature of things. The Sith leaders that you're really looking at, there's not a lot of them, right? We have like Asajj Ventress, which is kind of interesting because she comes down to turn earlier. We've got Darth Revan. We have both Darth Vaders, but that's not necessarily something that you're actually going to have on the board. Emperor Palpatine is a Sith, and Darth Maul is a Sith. Realistically, the 2 that I've found the most success with, Asajj Ventress and Darth Revan. But some of those leaders are really not that powerful in of themselves. Like Asajj could do some good work. Revan, I think, is actually just weaker. Like a 3/6 for 5 is just not that great. And his overall ability doesn't do a whole lot, but it does work with Malak very nicely. This card in general is just more of, shows you how powerful Darth Malak is when you're playing him with all these other Sith cards that are not that great, or like Sith leaders that are not like that amazing, and he still performs as well as he does. It works excellently with all the Force synergy cards, like Force Throw, can work with like Darth Revan's lightsaber, giving him grit. Overall, he can just work with all the different things that this set's kind of trying to work with. Always 2 is another example. You can play Asajj, you can play Malak, get him readied up, and then play Always 2 after that. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. This is a card that, when we get more Sith leaders, I think this is going to be one of the better ones. We can talk a lot about a lot of these cards, like, okay, what happens if we get a bunch of, go wide heroism units? Well, I don't think go wide heroism has always, like, not really that great of a strategy anyways. What about like if we get a bunch of upgrades and there's an upgrade deck? Is Mythosaur going to be good? Probably not. What happens if we, get ways to look at the top card of opponent's decks like every single turn reliably? Like maybe Zuckuss will be a little bit better. But Malak is one of those cards where a 5 resource 4/7 is very tanky. It is above the stats in terms of like Kerr, or it was pretty much like just below the most excellent 5 drops, right? Because 6 is what you're looking for, which is 12 points of stats. This has 11. But you get Overwhelm, and the fact that you get it immediately readied up is incredibly powerful. So that's the key with this, and it's very unlikely to die because of that 7th toughness. So really, really quite interesting with Malak, and has performed quite well so far. Grogu's next. This one is a 3-drop ground unit, 1/6 Force Heroism. It has hidden, so when it comes down, you can't have it be attacked, or your opponent can't attack it. You have this action to exhaust, heal up to 2 damage from a unit. If you do, deal that much damage to a unit, any unit whatsoever. So I played a lot with Grogu. I've also played a lot against Grogu. A lot of people have really enjoyed Grogu. I tried him just really early on into the set 5, and he really was unimpressive for me. The 1/6 body with the Force tag is something that's relevant. It can be obnoxious to deal with this guy. And the best case scenario I've seen for him is like he soaks up a little bit of damage, deals 2 to 4 damage to a unit, and that's it. That's the end of his story. So not like absolutely atrocious, but not that great. Han 2 blue, more controlling elements, more value oriented, can deploy this guy out as a 1/4 on turn 1, and then you can immediately use the healing to start dealing 2 to some certain things. Not that great, but it's decent. It's not like insane or anything. To me, this is like a C tier card. Again, can have a little bit of potential here and there, but realistically, most of the time ends up being a 1/6 and then just like immediately dies or like just randomly gets hits with something. This is a 3 drop, by the way. Like you have to spend 3 resources for this. So it definitely is something to really not be all that excited about, especially since the action hasn't really done enough so far. I'm really curious to see if someone's going to be able to really get some use out of Grogu too, because Grogu, I had a little bit of hope for this guy. Next up, we've got the Father. This one is 8 drop ground unit, colorless, 5/10 force. When you use the force, you may deal 1 damage to this unit. If you do, the force is with you. So every time you use the force, you can gain the force back. So first off, 8 resource, 5/10, bad. Not something that I'm really, really happy about. I mean, not bad, I should say. It's just not enough for that to really be the qualifying factor as to play this card, right? Similar to like Yoda, like a 5/9, a 5/10. These things are like, okay, whatever. I guess they're there. It's what they do when they come down or when they're in play that really needs to make up for their cost. And the Father is just basically re-giving you the force. And does this come into play? Not really. I've played the Father a couple times. I haven't really found any time where the Father really shined, because what happens is when you're playing the Father and you're playing a deck that's trying to utilize the force a lot, you already have so much force generation that realistically you don't have a way to spend it. The only time I've seen the Father do anything was with like a Luke Skywalker, the new Luke Skywalker on the battlefield. You play a unique unit, you use the force to trigger Luke's ability, and you get the force back, which means you can play another unique unit, use the force, trigger Luke's ability, etc., etc., etc. Other than that, there hasn't really been enough repeatable usages of the force to really leverage the fact that you can just, okay, use the force, use the force, use the force, use the force. And that's all he's doing. That's literally all he's offering. So you need to build your deck as a force deck. You need to make sure he survives the turn you play him into the next turn. And then you need to have the specific combinations of cards to actually use his ability to make sure it works. So similar to Yoda, you need to be playing a force deck. You need to set it up so that you have the force and you can do all this stuff. But then he doesn't do something immediately, like heal your base or deal damage to another unit. So you have to have all these other cards to even make this guy do anything, because otherwise he's just sitting there as a 5/10. To me, this is a D tier card. Not that great at all. Next up, we've got Constructed Lightsaber. This one, pretty straightforward, but it's a 3 cost colorless upgrade, +2/+3, attached to a force unit. If it's a heroism, restore 2. If it's a villainy unit, get raid 2. And if it's neither, it gains Sentinel. So generally speaking, you're not going to have neither in most situations. If it's a force unit and you're playing it in your deck, most of them fall under a villainy or heroism category. Most of them, especially since most of your leaders are going to be force units, and that's usually where your upgrades go. So that's something to consider. What about 3 resource upgrade +2/+3 and restore 2? Is that good enough? It's not amazing. It's not bad though. It does some work in some cases. What about raid 2? Is a 3 resource upgrade +4/+3 good enough? Again, it's not horrible, but it's not insanely good. Most of the time, 4/3 resources, I'd rather just have a straight up +3/+3 like Fall Lightsaber that gives me a better effect, or most cases like in Heroism, I'd rather have Jedi Lightsaber to control the board. Those cards actually just have way more impact overall in the combat oriented side of things. This one is not bad. As I said, it's not bad. There's just nothing really super exciting about it. And most of the time you're putting it on one of your leaders, you're getting either Restore or the Raid 2, and that's it. Like that's what you're getting. You're getting an upgrade. Like, do you want a +3/+3 or +4/+3 upgrade? Maybe. Do you want a +2/+3 upgrade with Restore 2? Maybe. It's kind of fun in Rey. A lot of people talked about that. She already has Restore 3, so now you get Restore 2, so it's Restore 5, and then you can like keep readying her up for like healing massive chunks. But overall, it's kind of been in the B tier category, like very low of B tier. Again, nothing too crazy, nothing to complain about really. It's an upgrade. If you're looking for an upgrade, it's going to do fine. And it is colorless, which is nice. So, I mean, it's kind of colorless, but also kind of not, in that you do need to pick up one or the other. You don't get Raid 2 and Restore 2. So whatever deck you're playing in it, you can kind of define what it's going to do. So that is the last one on our list, though. Constructed Lightsaber. And overall, our list, as you can see, most of the cards are in the C or D tier, which tends to be how legendaries are. Most of them are like niche cards, very specific scenarios, or very expensive, or just do something that you don't really care about because there's not enough support for it. B tier, these ones are kind of just like the cards that are good, like they're just solid. They're going to be played. They're going to be played on curve. The A tier, something special, something a little bit more special, something that actually can perform quite well. And then the two at the top, Vigilance, really winning here. Anakin and Darth Vader, these two are kind of meta defining. Like, they are so powerful that if we're able to construct decks that actually leverage them and can really perform well against the meta, it is going to be tough to beat Anakin and to beat Darth Vader, especially Darth Vader's case with ECL. That deck and combination is just incredible. But yeah, Anakin and Darth Vader both being able to really kind of control the board for you and just dominate in terms of value. That's where you want to be. That is absolutely where you want to be. For the rest of them, there's some good ones in there, like I mentioned, but overall the legendaries on the weaker side of things. I think this set's legendaries are a little bit weaker than some of the other sets legendaries overall. Like, if you were to compare how many legendaries we have and how many that I consider to be potentially pretty good, I think this one definitely has some way big outliers, and then also just some real big stinkers in terms of power level. But overall, weaker than previous sets. Maybe not like Twilight of the Republic, but definitely Shadows of the Galaxy and Jump to Lightspeed and Spark Rebellion, that type of stuff. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.